Step into the danger zone. You don't stop listening. It's Let's Find Out with Diego. Step into it. Ooh, yeah!
The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
All systems go.
On this episode of Let's Find Out, our guest is a prominent figure in the full disclosure movement within UFOlogy. He is the founder of fulldisclosuremovement.org and is actively involved in driving awareness through conscious media and community action. We will delve into the upcoming 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference, a groundbreaking event set to take place on July 15th through the 18th at the Sirata Beach Resort in St. Pete Beach, Florida. The conference promises to be a platform for presenters to come together, share their experiences, insights, and to seek out the truth, embark on the journey beyond the stars. All this plus more. Please welcome our good friend, the Solar Bee himself, Brian Tseng. Brian, my friend, welcome back to Let's Find Out.
Thank you, Diego. It's a pleasure and honor to be here my second time out, especially after the successful event 2024 Full Disclosure Now conference last year. I've got a lot to report. Then, of course, as you and I were discussing just beforehand, we have the November worldwide UFO sightings extending until now, but really kind of drowned out and covered up by the drones in New Jersey, which I hope we'll get to discuss later. And in addition to the upcoming 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference, again in Florida this July, St. Pete Beach at the lovely Sirata Beach Resort, July 15th to 18th, and again paired up with their sister event. Even though they're called Day of Being 5.0, it's really, I should talk to Zach and Sue Fisher, the two of the main founders. It should be called Weekend of Being 5.0 because it's going into their fifth year, and it's extended that Saturday and Sunday following our lead up Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 days and nights of goodness with 35 plus presenters on two different stages with panels, workshops, special event dinners, live music. Adam Apollo is going to be DJing one night for a big costume dance party blowout. It's a lot, and I'm really looking forward to it. We would love to have you join us there and be on the scene to interview people.
It would be awesome. I'd love to one day get out there and start bringing my mobile microphones and stuff and just start interviewing people, because I'm due for a trip, man. It's stressful just being in one place for so long. You got to go out there and meet some people and shake hands. And there's a lot of great stories out there, no matter what state you go to. And it's interesting with the conference being in Florida, because Florida is really no stranger to UFO activity or cryptids, because it's very active in Florida. But we'll definitely get into that here in a second. We definitely, last year we talked about last year's conference, and it went very well for you. If you don't mind, let's go back in time, because I always like a good origin story, and I think we might have discussed that last year on that episode. When was the point in your life that you decided to dive into the full disclosure movement? There must have been an event in your life that, one of those things where lightning strikes, your whole life changes. Can you tell us what that was and where it was?
So there are a couple things I'd like to say about that, because I think lots of us have lots of those events and they build up along the way. For me, I just came in with a knowing when I was young that I wanted to help people. From seeing, driving around in the back seat of the car with going out to food with my mom and dad and my one brother, Michael came along 10 years later than Jason and I. But I'd look out the window as we're driving through the inner city of Philadelphia or New York City, and I'd see a cold person, homeless, lying alone, unattended. I'm like, Mommy, why is the person hurting? And they're like, don't point out the window. I'm like, what? I can't even point out that there are people in pain. That's little things as a child. to just, lying down on the ground in my one bedroom that I shared with my brother Jason, and thinking to myself, God, I want to make a difference. I want to help. I was like 5 years old or 7 years old or something. And I think that those prayers are answered. And I think many of us came in not knowing what I know now, like from like the whole Dolores Cannon, their acute quantum hypnosis healing technique sessions with like thousands of people for thousands of hours, has discovered that it seems like, and many people I've spoken with since then, many of whom never even heard of Dolores Cannon or QHHT, their own spirit guides and knowing, however they know, confirms that, here on Earth, there was like a call put out, perhaps by source, for positive beings from anywhere to answer a call and assist the ascension of humanity, given humanity is not just a free humanity. It's like the H.G. Wells Time Machine novel, where you got the Morlocks under the surface running everything, coming up to literally cannibalize people whenever they want to. And so there were many events over the years since then, because then I kind of had a phase, and I think a lot of us starseeds, we come in either in waves, right? Like I put Penny Bradley, one of my good friends, grand godmother to my one and only daughter, who's a grandmama bear to the secret space program, and she was born in the 1950s, and so it's part of the more old school guard for the secret space programs, Montauk projects, time travel, breakaway civilizations, and giving testimony to all those things. I consider her the first wave, and I'd consider perhaps you and I would be more the second wave. The first wave got just getting people to understand ETs and UFOs even exist. Now we're to come support their work. Now that they've, gotten onto the beach, we want to secure the beachhead, if you will, by reinforcing all the paranormal and ET phenomenon, and all the hidden documents or so-called top secret and above stuff that's being leaked as it should be, because a lot of the things being perpetrated are crimes against humanity. And things like 9/11 later on really woke me up, but that's still the 3D. I'm not getting like ETs and stuff until I saw like a David Icke book where about 9/11 truth, and he was talking about reptilians. And back then, this is around 2004, 5, 6 maybe, I saw that and it kind of turned me off. The reptilians. Here I am now throwing an event where we're having James Bartley fly out from Australia. He's one of the, a foremost expert on reptilian ETs in particular. And I'm having him on my main stage. And so from 2001 happening to learning about Trade Center Tower 7, so that's 3 buildings falling spontaneously from 2 planes, and watching the video and watching all these buildings, wow, they kind of look like, demolition, controlled demolition, which says, turns the narrative totally on its head. Getting more into the esoteric occult 4D and 5D beyond the 3D matrix, as I, and many others term it, the normie stuff, is starting to get into, wait a second, there's secret societies, and the Iraq war might not have been just for oil, but it might have been for stargates and technology underneath Iraq and that part of the Middle East, because of what it is, to the ancient civilizations going back to Egypt, Babylon, Samaria, Atlantis, Lemuria. And, as I've come along, I've had some paranormal experiences. I don't know if I mentioned my David Copperfield experience the last show, where when I shook his hands when I was like 21, when I went to go see a magic show he did, in Vegas with my parents, when we're at the New Jersey Shore, Atlantic City area. And when I shook his hand, his eyes literally turned jet black on me, like in a movie. That was a very paranormal thing to me that I can't deny. In the meantime, since as an organizer of events, and not just an event organizer, but I really am a self-appointed volunteer advocate, organizer for what I and others would call the full disclosure movement. I get to work with a lot of people in the community who have secret space program, military grade, remote viewing, psychic, clairvoyant, astral projection, channeling, mediumship, abilities, and applying that to advancing the movement in so many ways.
And it's interesting to me because there's so many highways we can go with what you just said. So let me pick up on something you said about reptilians. When I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and I said I was going to have you back on the show, who's also a fan of your work, and he was asking, well, with these different extraterrestrial races that have been known to be on Earth, he was wondering, and I wonder too, because there seems to be a power struggle sometimes. And I don't know if these competing races, I don't know which goal they have or what, but it seems to me reptilians come up a lot in conversation. I don't know if it was, I had an interview, I don't want to say if it was Dr. Dennis Carroll. I want to say it was him that he was talking about reptilians and other people I've had on, but it seems to be the one of the main ones here on Earth.
I can speak to why. Basically, you've got the Alpha Draco Siakar reptilians and what was known as the Alpha Draco Siakar Orion Empire. And so that's why the pyramids and a lot of these sacred sites all around the world, not just in Egypt, and there are pyramids all over the world, China, the US, Ireland, you name it, Alaska, and Bermuda Triangle. They are often found aligned in the same pattern as the Orion's belt stars. And that's because it's representative of this empire of these giant winged reptilians with tails who are very psychically powerful as well as physically powerful and relatively technologically advanced, not just because they developed the technology, but in conquering all these other peoples and groupings, they basically, taken over, cannibalize that technology for themselves, as well as many of those peoples, and enslave them, and then gone on to genetically exploit them. And so the Earth has, for so long, as far as I guess, as far as I can tell from a galactic law perspective, been their domain, their territory, for as long as anyone's who had laid claim. They're the first to say lay claim to it. And so even though their empire has been, from what I understand, and don't quote me on this, but my understanding is that it's been fractured for these hundreds, if not thousands of years with competing factions. The Draco at least have ruled, whether or not it's one single empire or just as, different Draco factions warring it out, like Rome fighting over the different countries that they once ruled as one empire. Earth is within that. And then you had all these other races, they're called starseed nations, who came together to plant upon Earth the genetic experiment that we, humanity, represent, combining the DNA of at least 22 or 24 of these different starseed races, including reptilians. And a lot of people, including myself, say, well, why would you include reptilian DNA? Well, it gives reptilians a stake in the game, okay, so that they would allow this experiment, so as far as I can figure, okay, and it gives the reptilians a quote-unquote back door to controlling humans through the reptilian part buried in our brain that hardwires us, okay, and what the good guys understood, quote-unquote good guys, are more benevolent, higher vibration beings, let's put it that way, are like, well, they didn't have the capacity and still don't to eat their own young if they're in a starvation situation, and you got to do it to survive or else everyone dies. The reptilians, they're hardwired to do that. They're hardwired to survive no matter what. And so maybe around then is when they agreed to clear out the dinosaurs, because that experiment had been a dead end. Oh, we got big monsters and this isn't going to go anywhere for forever. And so they wiped the slate clean, and that's humanity. And then after millions and millions of years of us being a genetic experiment repository, and then I can talk a bit about that too, why we're so important as a genetic repository, is because apparently a lot of these ET species, as they develop technologically and they travel away from their home planet and into the stars, for whatever reason, over hundreds and thousands of years, especially away from their home planets, they may lose the ability to reproduce naturally. So it's nice to come back to the main master material, or much closer to the master material, and also, in addition to like their own original or more original material, other material from other races that could be valuable to, becoming fertile again, or having different abilities to handle different environments. And so sometime along the way, we had the Anunnaki come by. Yeah. And they kind of probably fought it out with the local reptilians, and then the Alpha Dracos who were coming by and saying, hey, what are you Anunnaki doing on our ball of dirt here with our other reptilian beings chilling out on this nature preserve? What, you're enslaving the monkey-like humans, quote unquote, to mine gold for you on Earth and Mars? And then somewhere back then, you had Tiamat. Okay, some people call it the planet Maldek. What I'm told by multiple sources is that Maldek, in the Draco-Reptilian language, means our turf, or ours. And so a lot of the quote-unquote galactics, they're like, please don't call it Maldek, please call it Tiamat. And then Tiamat, perhaps in the Pyramid Wars between the Anunnaki or maybe the Draco, I don't know how, that got blown up, and that's the source of the Kuiper Belt, the meteor belt in our solar system. It used to be a big planet, and Mars, from the Pyramid Wars, it might have been between different Anunnaki factions like Enki and Enlil, while enslaving humanity on Mars and Earth to mine gold. They may have destroyed the atmosphere of Mars to make it less livable. Because I'm told by friends like John Whitberg and Arkin Ra, and many people have been served with something called the Mars Defense Force, where they were enslaved by Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, ICC, where they served as part of Solar Warden or Radiant Guardian, fleets, space fleets, to patrol the solar system and beyond. That there is life on the surface of Mars, and some in there, it's not as nowhere near inner Earth vibrant as inner Mars isn't anything, I'm told, compared to inner Earth. It's more of like a dead-end planet with remnants of life and still forests in certain parts, and water and breathable atmosphere, but it's super thin, and if you're not acclimated properly or don't have the right gear, you probably die.
My understanding with the whole thing with Mars, and I have to go back to the Lost Book of Enki. I was reading that not long ago, and I think was it like a midpoint when they were mining the gold? Was it was shipped there, then shipped to Nibiru, or something like that, right?
Yeah, because the thing is, like, the Anunnaki and their Nibiru, their flying planet, apparently its atmosphere has been severely destroyed or harmed and toxic because of the warring amongst themselves on their own planet. So now they go and exploit and help destroy other people's planets. Like, they're known as the a-holes of the galactic community because they're opportunists. They'll come in, opportunistically enslave us, and then when they get all this heat from the more benevolent galactic forces coming and saying, hey, you can't do that, that's all right, they're like, okay, we're out of here now. And so meanwhile, the reptilians kind of went underground with that agreement and agreed not to be seen on the surface. Well, fine. Now they went underground, and the reptilians are not known for honoring universal law, the law of one, sovereignty, contracts, and deals. So they'll figure out ways to violate at least the spirit, if not the letter, of these contracts any chance they can get. And so, fine, they're hiding on the surface, and they could have maybe a few representatives be shapeshifted, and so you're not seeing them technically as reptilians. And they could have bloodline, quote unquote, families that they've been genetically inbreeding to hold the reptilian energy while harvesting the loosh or psychic and spiritual energy through rituals that they force their elite pawns to do. And then that's where you see it, whether in Hollywood, the royal families, Washington, D.C., on and on and on. And that's where all that's coming from. There's these much deeper ET backgrounds, in addition to all the occult, esoteric stuff, which already is mind-blowing.
It is. It's interesting because I'm going to go back a little bit because I get ahead of myself. I might confuse myself. I try not to. So if you were to look in different religions, different times, different epochs, or whatever you want to call it, where things start, they end, they start over again. It seems like we've been visited by different types of extraterrestrials mistaken as gods, and they all still war with each other. But it seems like that humanity is always the main focal point. What is so interesting about humanity?
It's a great question, Diego. There's a lot that's interesting about humanity. In addition to being the genetic repository, okay, many of us, when whatever you want to call it, God's source put out the call for beings to show up, many of those beings, we have what are known as starseed families, meaning there's a book by, I don't know if it might be Dr. Raymond Moody, or it might be someone else, called Many Lives, Many Masters. It's the idea of living all these different incarnated lives and how they can string together and interact with each other, even because reality as we know it is much more fluid and malleable than most of us would think. And then also time isn't really a thing. To us it feels like a thing, but if you really embrace the concept that time isn't real and all time and space can be linked as one, then that also has other huge ramifications. But beyond that, there's a balance of power factor. If we have starseed family that we come from, and they don't want to violate the prime directive by coming in from the stars and changing things down from the earth, well, what do? They incarnate their whoever, maybe their best and their bravest and their brightest, and then up for a challenge and a butt kicking, and to give a butt kicking, to come down here on Earth to literally put skin in the game. Now they're not violating the prime directive by changing things from outside to changing it from in here. Okay, by putting their own people here on the ground, but as humans. Now they can fly their ships, come visit their person, their incarnated person here as a human, when they're really, say, Lyran tiger people, known as the Katai, like our friend Christy May Wixon in the community. Or they can come down, they're from the lion people, the Irma, or they're mantis beings, or Pleiadians, whatever you name it. And then a lot of those people get targeted and picked up by the secret space programs and the deep state to be exploited as quote unquote super soldiers. But then there's the reptilians who've been harvesting and looshing off of humanity for all this time. We've been run as a farm. And so, anyone out there who's seen the film Jupiter Ascending, at first I was like, oh, it's cheesy. I don't like actor and actress, romance, sci-fi, whatever. But I actually watch it. It's pretty good. And what I'm told is that what it depicts is actually accurate in many ways. You've got these galactic, families or groups that, if they're not respective of sovereignty and free will, they'll take advantage of entire planets. And the Draco, the negative Draco, are right up there. Now, having said that, via telepaths, psychics, mediums in our community, such as Christopher Jacobs and Joanna Michaels of thelifting.net, and also Audrey Walters, and also another gal named Abby. I've been in contact with a being known as Her Highness Ramlamvira, and she's an Alpha Draco, albino queen, and her deal is that the Alpha Draco, one of the schisms for their empire collapsing and fracturing, is that many of them, apparently the more patriarchal, male-dominated factions, they worship and ingest black goo. And groups like Her Highness Ramlamvira's, that she wants her people freed of the black goo. And the black goo he was first reported on by people like Miles Johnston of the Bases Project, who will also be on my stage once again this July, as he was last year. Reported on the black goo. It's depicted in the X-Files extensively. And it's basically like super advanced femtotech, nanotech, that some kind of negative quantum AI out of time and space manipulates to assimilate and take us over. And then it's not to be confused with like a black goo that's native to Earth, that's more like Earth blood and is in oil, or can be maybe found in some oil deposits.
And as you're telling me this information, in my mind, you tell it so well, like it's almost like you've done it your whole life. And then when you do your research and talk to other people, but it's in my opinion, and I'm just making a judgment call here, that somehow you're receiving this download, this information. Is this happening to you in a dream state, or is this just happening to you in real life? I'll take this as a example. You're driving your vehicle, you're walking, you're jogging, or at the gym. How are you receiving this information? Because it's so full of accuracy and points and facts that I don't know. It would take a lifetime to learn that without having some sort of outside help to receive it. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Absolutely, Diego, and thank you for seeing my strengths there in this regard. And in fact, I will be, in addition to the conference series, I'm launching a whole platform. I have an amazing team, the Full Disclosure Network, and an app and a full disclosure movement cryptocurrency linked to the network to help put money in the pockets of everybody. And I'll be doing a master course also offered on that network. And so this is what you're speaking of. I'm going to be making it a point to teach a yearly class for like a select 50 students around the world, to attend. And what I'm doing is I'm combining many skills and experiences and gifts, and I could go through them, because not all of them, the audience is like, oh, I can just do that per se, but others, the audience can say, oh, I can definitely do that. And a lot of this is what you want to do to develop your discernment. Okay, so for me, growing up as a first generation American born Chinese kid, where my father, Jack Tseng, was busy creating Tseng labs in our basement and revolutionizing the computer graphics field in the 80s and 90s to generate the wealth that he could leave behind his 3 idiot sons. I'm the eldest, so that I could then dump it into the movement to help accelerate our Star Trek future. I was kind of like on my own to fend for myself, to figure it out, right? I remember going to like a shopping mall and looking at a music store and see like a Kiss poster with like these 4 dudes on it dressed as like psychotic clowns sticking their tongues out, and people buying Grateful Dead gear, and people worshiping Bob Dylan. And I'm like, what is all this stuff? So I had to just being lost and then having to figure out how to not be lost, that's invaluable, right? I encountered a little bit of racism as a Chinese American guy on the East Coast in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, a little bit, but not really. And I don't have a chip on my shoulder at all. And then I used to read a lot of books, and in reading books, it gives you, especially as a young person, because I didn't have a lot of friends, because I didn't, I was like, my dad didn't know to take me to soccer practice and hockey and this and this and that. And my mom, they got me to some things. Like I did do some martial arts and gymnastics and stuff like that, but with my one brother. And we did a lot of other cultural exchange stuff to learn Chinese or try to. But traveling, that also did a lot, reading the books and seeing things from a more author's eye or quote unquote God's eye view, or from the character's view. Then being a mentor to people, getting involved in like student government, and being an organizer. When I went to Occidental College to get my biochemistry degree, thinking I'd learn how to genetically modify plants or bacteria to clean up oil spills, And I found out that the biotech industry just cares about the next shaky leg drug to get millions or billions of dollars off of. And I became an organizer for 8 years of physicians and nurses and other medical professionals doing medical advocacy. So these are life and death cases where someone needs a heart surgery or a treatment. It's being denied. We have to organize the doctors on an all-volunteer basis to bring these cases to us. We have to develop an analysis, and then off of that, a strategy to then mobilize everybody to then win the heart surgery or keep a hospital from being shut down, and then write about it, and then go out and speak about it, and then recruit more people to it on an all-volunteer, non-government, no strings attached money basis. And then you do that for 8 years, and then add another, 15 plus on top of that since then, freelancing it. A lot of that, then I'm a sci-fi fantasy movie buff. So a lot of these things gives me an eye to this. And then having done a lot of advocacy, now, back when I was a normal organizer advocate just with doctors and nurses in the medical system, you're dealing with sometimes a lot of people with mental health issues, and trying to piece it together while helping them, and there's psychiatrists to get them care. And then since getting more involved in the full disclosure movement, really formally, beginning of 2023, around then, I've been working with a lot of people with alters that come out, where a psychic message will come through from a being, whether forest people, the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, ETs, angelics. My father, who has passed on from a certain rolling of his sleeve, he passed away 2 Novembers ago from that, and he's doing great on the other side. By the way, he's very proud of me, and he's happy that we're working on the movement. So yeah, a lot of those things have contributed to me to being able to not only put the picture together as best I can, and I'm not claiming I'm always right, so I'll give that disclaimer, but I'll give the best as I can in a way that makes sense to the point where people can act on it. And I call that actionable intelligence.
With a lot of this information that you receive, I might have asked you this last time I had you on. You're turning over a lot of rocks. You're talking about disclosure. So we're going to go back to disclosure, because there's got to be a time to where you're going out there, you're doing the podcasts, you're doing the conferences, you're speaking engagements. Somewhere down the road, and forgive me for asking this question, you don't have to answer it. Have you put yourself in any kind of situation that may be dangerous for you, in a case of receiving that one random phone call or a piece of mail where they're telling you, hey, Brian, you got to cut this out?
So I've had people I believe are voice to skull MK Ultra victim trolls come at me and attack me just like they've attacked so many people in our community. It is a matter of public record. People like Eugene Sonny Irvin, who probably was used in the programs because his father was like a Houston businessman who probably hung out with the George Bush types back in the day, Dallas, in Houston areas, Texas, and there are people like that who. Jesse Belsky, who was recently arrested in Watertown, New York, for threatening the police department to like kill and blow them all up after they did a traffic stop on him like the month before. And that person has been threatening to do similar to all of us in the community. So I've gotten those kind of threats. And, you know, I always told Eugene and Jesse, you want to come visit me in Nevada, you know, and attack me, I can defend myself. I've got plenty of defense around here. I'm already protected up anyway, as long as I walk the path. And, you know, there's a lot of mine shafts to disappear down around here. So, but really it comes down to, I believe on a mission like so many of us. And if I'm doing my job and I'm doing what Source God wants to be done, then Source God will clear the path for me. And not only has Mother, Father, Source God done that for me this whole time, all my life, because I've had knowing. Also, to answer your question, like how do I? Part of it is there's also a certain knowing of a path to follow or when to reach out or call someone. There's been a lot of that over the years, more than I can just say, oh, it's a coincidence now. And my cup overflows. I'm always continually given the resources that I need to do the job. And have I done anything that's dangerous? You know, or gotten the threats beyond the mind controlled voice to skull trolls that everyone else gets hit with? Well, I know, and I've been told just by sensitives and ET contacts that yes, I'm on a lot of lists, and then that's where the protection comes in. I just speaking out, running conferences. There's lots of people that don't want us to do this, but I have a feeling that every time they've sent someone at me or cast a spell, it's been neutralized and rebuffed and then some, to the point where they probably give up after a while. If they're smart or they don't have endless resources, which they don't anymore.
When I asked that question, I asked more on the human side of things, because there's another side of this too, which is I would call the spiritual or extraterrestrial side to these threats or attacks. You mentioned earlier when you met David Copperfield, right? And you had a sense when you saw in the eyes of a reptilian, right? So you must be also attracting the attention of other beings such as that.
Yes, and we all do. Because anyone who has, I'm told that I've been used in the programs as a navigator and a seer, and a scientist mostly. And so I've run into a lot of people that have recall of me in different situations, like wearing a lab coat in something known as the Hulk program, while Susan Long and Veronica Bartolini were being put in cyborg bodies and hooked up to hoses and stuff. They remember me. I was probably mind controlled. It wasn't like me, you know. Don't feel like Brian was experimenting. No, I wasn't. It was like an alter of me under exploitation and enslavement, like everyone else put through these programs. And I had like a white lab coat and a clipboard, and I was like up in like the skybox room, overlooking the factory floor where they were. And I asked both of them, do you have any particular emotional feeling towards that memory of me? And they're like, no, it's neutral. It's not like I was horrible or terrible to them or anything like that. So thankfully, right? Some people in our community, unfortunately, are known to have, even though they're wonderful, beautiful people, they are known to have alters. Okay, these alternate programmed personality, identity, soul fragments that can be quite nasty, very nasty.
At the conference last year,
Mm-hmm.
did any of them show up there?
Yes, I was told by Valiant Thor via Christopher Jacobs and Joanna Michaels. We did a recording show where Chris's format with Joanna is the first third of the show or half of the show will generally speak on whatever topic, but then he'll let, after, with blessings and clearings and surrounded by our spiritual guides, he'll allow a positive being for our highest, greatest good of all to come forth to then relay what messages they want to, and whatever they can say in like an hour before Christopher's fried out from like channeling. It takes a lot of energy, and so Valiant Thor, also, he's known as the guy from The Stranger at the Pentagon. I believe it was 1954. Around then, was at the Pentagon for 2 years or so as a visitor. At the Pentagon, he was trying to sway the U.S. government and military to sign an agreement with the Galactic Federation to stop nuclear weapons testing and armament, and cool down the Cold War, and exchange, receive clean energy and other Star Trek type technology. Unfortunately, around then, the U.S. government signed the Greada Treaty with the Zeta Reticulan Greys, who were really proxies for the reptilians. And then that's when they said for supposedly limited amounts of experiments on humans during the abductions, that the Greys, would then trade to the U.S. military technologies like, spaceflight, anti-gravity, and perhaps certain weapons technologies. And ever since then, that kind of so-called legally gave the Draco even more ground to exploit Americans, at least under that agreement. And then, so that's partly why does it always keep coming back to reptilians? Well, that's a big reason why. But of course, not all reptilians are bad. And I like to think that Her Highness Rumavira, the Draco, queen, is moving more from dark to light. And that's a good thing for all of us.
Yeah, it kind of gives me the thinking about sci-fi. Reminds me of not 100% like V in the 80s, very big about reptilians, and I think that's just in the consciousness of us from the start. But there were the bad aliens or the bad reptilians, and there were the good ones trying to help humanity so they wouldn't get conquered, resources taken or eaten. It's interesting you mentioned Valiant Thor because I haven't heard that name in so long. And that seems to be one of the more prominent names from that era. Yeah, has there been another one since then that's had that? I'll use this as a joking matter, like a celebrity status.
It's the same one, because the person who came through telepathically to Christopher before Valiant Thor in our session the other day was Indrid Cold, who has a very distinct way of saying, this, I am the one known as Cold, even though I'm far from being actually cold, right? He kind of talks about that. Indrid Cold, also very well known in the ufology literature, is actually second in command to Valiant Thor, as far as I know. He's a member of Commander Valiant Thor's crew.
Interesting. I just, in fact, if I go to my right, I have a map of cryptids here in West Virginia. Angry Cold is it right there, right next to me. Kind of funny you mentioned that.
He's from Lanalos. He's known as a Lanalosian, and he's got that kind of dumbbell shaped craft, but he can also probably phase in and out to a certain extent.
Wow, I don't know because I'm sorry. I'm looking over here. There's Ingrid right there. So move it on because now we get to the part to where we're going to start talking about your event coming up in Florida and talking about full disclosure. And I think on the pre-interview we were talking about, I brought up the subject that around 2023 and 2024, things were looking pretty good as far as for disclosure. There was a good amount of film out there that seemed to be pretty legit. And I say that because it didn't come from some Yahoo on YouTube or anything like that. It came actual from a government source. and there were a couple of individuals that were testifying before the Congress or something like that, to where we were getting kind of close to them finally saying, okay, the jig is up. Here's something. All of a sudden, I feel like I went to sleep one morning, woke up, everything just disappeared. Business as usual. I don't know what the cause of that is, but in my mind, I have not forgotten.
Well, a couple of things. No matter who's in office and no matter how things are going, my fellow full disclosure folks in our community, we're not going to slow roll it either way. We're going to continue to do the shows and podcasts and conferences and release the books and support each other and do consults and help each other, help others in the community or help others who are new to this, introduce them so they too can help advance us towards a Star Trek future by being awake enough that, among other things, it makes it easier for the positive ETs to reveal themselves more and more and more, so that no matter how much the mainstream media tries to pivot to drones in New Jersey or, Oprah Winfrey, the masses, when if you were to realistically, honestly poll us, right, I think 80% almost by now would say, yeah, ETs are real. Of course, there's life on other planets, um, and as those numbers increase, we do get stronger. It's going to take a lot more than that, but that's just one indicator. And so I also think that the current administration, um, they did do that hearing where there was I forget which congresswoman, but she literally asked about deep underground military bases and human ET hybridization programs, which is wild. So for me, that's actually a little bit faster than the slow roll we're normally used to. And then I believe behind the scenes, the current administration is cleaning up a lot of the negative groups, the garbage in the FBI, CIA / USAID, Department of Education, IRS, probably Department of Energy, and I could go on and on and on. And so I think they've got their hands full to the point that first they're cleaning up the 3D mess while allowing the 4D stuff to be addressed in that one hearing or in other recent hearings. And then in the meantime, we're all doing our job. Of course, I want them to go faster. I want them to shoot down some of these chemtrail planes. Do something, stop the chemtrails, release more and more information. I suspect they are and will, but who knows when it comes to government and bureaucracy. My understanding is that Trump, back during his initial 2014 to 2020 term, 2016 to 2020 term, wanted to announce the existence of ETs. And the Galactic Federation contacts told him not to because we weren't apparently ready yet. And so here we are, and I believe we're ready. And the ETs have already announced to the Farsight Institute last November that they were going to appear. And they've been announcing more and more. And Yemi Genet, one of the more advanced remote viewers or premier remote viewers of the Farsight Institute under Dr. Courtney Brown, she and her group were told by the ETs during one of their ET boardroom meetings that we'd have worldwide viewings. So I guess to answer your question, Diego, there's the full disclosure movement track of ETs and the starseed humans who are advancing it no matter what the government does. And then there's a government which I think under the Trump administration, it's made one or two promising moves while they're busy handling all this other stuff that is probably more pressing, honestly, for them. Not for you and I, but for them it is.
And during that timeline, we talked about that earlier too. Going along with that, the drone sightings. And you have one camp saying, well, they're going to obviously blame the same countries. And there's another side that says it could be extraterrestrials. Um, I'll be honest with you. I don't know who did what. I could give kind of a guess. I'm pretty sure I might be wrong, but the timing seems suspect because all eyes went to the drones.
Exactly. The drones, I don't know. Let me use this example. Imagine, and whether or not you like Trump or not, I'm sure this imagery, this example will be very easy to understand. Let's say we're all at the New Jersey shore. I used to hang out at the New Jersey shore, everyone, during my summer times. I'm an East Coast boy, and originally. And we have a boat party. And let's say a bunch of us love Trump. Whatever, I love Trump, don't love Trump, doesn't matter. In this example, we all love Trump. We get together at a boat party. We're flying Trump flags, having a grand old time. And then the mainstream media, paid by these elements who are currently getting defunded as they're getting cleaned out, they hate Trump. Okay? That's what, and so they get their own speedboat. They put a big Trump flag on it, and then they speed through our huge boat party where the rest of us are legitimately having a wonderful time. And they're throwing beer bottles at us and into the water and shooting flare guns. And then the media comes along, okay? And then they hone in on this and say, look at these people, they're animals, to try to discredit us and to put the attention on these guys who shot someone in the face with a flare gun with their boat as a Trump flag supporter. And that's kind of what's happening right now. You've got the positive galactics who are out there above in our skies in force, outnumbering, outpowering the local Draco and Anunnaki forces and negative Zeta Greys and all the negative factions. And they're appearing visibly to us all. And the government and the lamestream, the derp state, can't have it. So then they pan to these drones in New Jersey, which are more likely reverse engineered craft that are human made. And some of them have been reported to be spraying people and animals with noxious sprays to make them sick. And then that's to install fear and to divert from worldwide, very advanced craft in our skies. And to this day, that I've seen them, I seen a ship in a cloud bank like the size of the town of Winnemucca here out my window as I'm on an elevated position looking into the cloud, more level at it. If you were on the ground in the town underneath, just in Winnemucca looking up, you'd see a cloud. My position looking at the cloud sideways and level with it, because I'm high up on Winnemucca Mountain here, or not high up, but the highest up on Winnemucca Mountain around here. I could see into the cloud, and it was a big cloud over the town, and then a bit of the cloud in the center was brushed away, and I was seeing hard edges, and I've seen video of this exact phenomenon in other places where it's yeah, peekaboo, I'm just peeking out, you can see me, making it obvious for anyone with eyes to see and ears to hear. And I said to my one business partner, housemate, Jaden, do you see this? That's the shit. He's yeah. And then I've asked through ET contacts via Christopher Jacobs or Audrey Walters, and they say, yep, that was a ship.
Wow. With these conflicts that are happening between the different factions, since we can't physically see them sometimes, are they just phasing in and out of dimensions as they go through, or is it something that we can't see because with our human eyes makes it harder to see these I'll use a terminology, wave patterns or light patterns?
Yeah, so some of them are phase shifted out of our reality, where if you're not vibrating in yourself in frequency and density of consciousness high enough, you can't see them. But if you begin to vibrate higher, or if you have dicyanin goggles to kind of cheat, infrared technology, then you can see them much more easily in many cases. You've got other craft that's probably more at the physical level that can be more easily shot down than the higher dimensional stuff. My belief is that a lot of these light craft, they're higher dimensional, and what we're seeing is their shadows, right? Except instead of a dark black shadow, it's a light shadow. And so when you look at videos that people have taken of light craft, it almost looks like you're looking at like background scenery, and then someone's shining a flashlight at the camera in the sky. And you're like, oh, that's just such bad special effects. It's like, no, you're probably just seeing their light shadow as they project down from a higher dimension or density. And then sometimes I believe they probably are fighting, and it may or may not be easy for us to see down here on the ground.
Interesting, because even the alien races war with each other, and I kind of feel like, what hope do we have? Because we also war with each other too. So it's hard to see if we'll ever get to that point or that peak where humanity is ready to receive these extraterrestrials, and I guess live in peace and harmony.
Well, let me say something about that. A lot of people, I've heard this line. It's very prevalent. Oh, humanity, will we ever get our crap together? And I like to say, it's not humanity unfettered with in a vacuum. We just can't figure it out. It's humanity where we've got at least 26,000 years of Babylonian money magic beast system rule, where we've got these Luciferians in the shadows manipulating all this, tainting every social and political professional system on this planet, and joke and try to inject this like woke virus crap, for example, as if the lamestream wasn't already bad enough. And so I'd like to see humanity unfettered, without all of these influences trying to drag us down, and then say, okay, well, let's see how humanity does from there. And I think that we're going to do a lot better than most people give us credit for.
Good, and I think that would be a great topic for another conversation down the road, to where how we can resist or open ourselves to, I guess, accept or receive better. Oh my gosh, the word's escaping me right now. Better direction, and listen to the proper spiritual beings in order to advance ourselves to be a little better. We can't do it ourselves, obviously, because the odds are stacked against us at this point. Definitely something interesting to talk to on the next episode. But as promised, let's talk about the full disclosure.
Yeah.
Was that?
We have friends, so just definitely be I'd say be cheerful. Actually, be more optimistic than not. In terms of the conference, for everyone out there, please visit fulldisclosuremovement.org, all one word. That's the conference website. If you want to just leave your email or not, just hit the submit thing. It'll take you right to the conference website, right beyond the grabbing your email thing. Also, I've got a newsletter blog where you'll get updates on the upcoming platform and cryptocurrency and app we're launching, as well as all the other developments in the movement. That's at fulldisclosure.network or www.fulldisclosure.network. Yeah.
Excellent. And in the spirit of that conversation, for 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference in St. Pete Beach, Florida, who's going to be there?
We've got Soma Ara is flying from Ireland, and she channels the Pleiadians. We've got Laura Eisenhower coming back, as well as Miles Johnston, Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress, Penny Bradley, Drago Reed. New for this year, we got Tom Althouse, the real writer, author of The Matrix, who Warner Brothers stole that from him. He has a stamped copy of the script that he wrote in 1993, along with choreographed fight scene breakdowns, like the kung fu scenes. and then he met with Warner Brothers and Joel Silver in 1996, and in 1999 The Matrix comes out. What do you know? And there's another lady out there, an African American woman named Sophia. She claims she wrote both The Matrix and The Terminator. I think she's either a red herring, or maybe she really did, and she got a download too, just like Tom. When they both got a similar download, went to Warner Brothers and got it stolen from both of them. And I don't discount that possibility. We got Jenny Lee, Psychic Seer. She does remote viewing, powerful enough. It's changed the direction of court cases and gotten guilty people discovered, called out. And she'll be doing an exclusive gallery workshop where she's able to very quickly tune in to loved ones and pets who have passed on who want to come through and have messages, and which to me is a huge service. And my father, via multiple different psychics, has come through to me since 2 Novembers ago. And I can tell it's him from the way people who never knew him describe him and, what he says and how he says it, or characteristics of his. We're going to have Christopher Jones and Joanna Michaels on stage again, and they'll be doing a channeling to have a Sasquatch come through, the forest people. The forest people say they don't attend a lot of the UFO conferences. Like, they'll attend all the Sasquatch conferences, but they make it a point to come to our ET UFO conference. And they themselves indeed are ET beings, and sometimes are on craft and are associated with craft. We've got Alondra Markman, who spoke recently about his experiences during the Montauk Project and time travel, and having MK Ultra done to him, on Lucas Alexander's show, Age of Truth TV. And Lucas is flying over from Denmark to join us. He has an extensive history of interviewing so many people in our community and having some of his own experiences and insights. Brad Olson will be coming and speaking on the occult and esoteric things, I believe it is. He's got a pretty wide a range. Brooks Agnew, world-class author, he'll be returning. I could go on and on. Samuel Chong will be coming for the first time, speaking on the Thayuba prophecies, which is an ET manuscript, basically, that was channeled by a Frenchman, and he got the pleasure of meeting that Frenchman and befriending him before he passed away, and he did an English translation of that. Let me see. Gosh, there's more. I'm just going to pull up my website here while we're talking, just because I'm sure there's a bunch of people I'm missing who I really should give shout-outs to, because people out there in the audience, Rion de Rouen and Tone Millard of Team Light are coming from Arizona. They're going to be presenting on spiritual warfare today and how it's done. Jean-Charles Moyen, he's a French super soldier and a Project Pegasus veteran. He'll be joining us for the first time. Yemi Genet of the Farsight Institute, world-class remote viewer, will be returning. I said earlier that James Bartley will be speaking on reptilians flying from Australia. Let's see. Antonia Lau will be coming for the first time, and she speaks on earth changes and preparing for things like pole shift. And her level of preparation is pretty hardcore. Matthew Mornian will be returning. He's with Remember Your Mission. I think it's .com, might be .org. Isha Bond Isha Arzleeb and Sean Bond, they'll be speaking of alien ET artifacts and connecting with them. Just like Mike Forrest. Mike Forrest, he's a guy who was recently excavating in Mexico next to Tula Pyramid in Tula Hidalgo. And his excavation site, they literally uncovered like a 1,000 pound obelisk thing or mini pyramid thing. And those video clips have gotten millions of views worldwide. And his insights on that stuff is amazing, and he'll be speaking during one of our panel discussions on that. Joshua Shapiro, I believe he's still coming. He should be there. He's got these some stuff lately, but he's known as the Crystal Skull Explorer, and he'll be moderating a panel on ancient ET artifacts and crystal skulls, because he's able to telepathically connect with crystal skulls. A lot of our people in our community are. That's one of the things he likes to specialize in. Christy Campbell, she'll be there. She is a well-known Montauk Project survivor and survivor of Le Chateau Lamoureux. That's the Mothers of Darkness Castle in Belgium. And her testimony from that time, or her altered's time there, rather, it's pretty wild. Micah Dank was a protege of Jordan Maxwell, and he's an astrotheologist. And he'll be speaking, as well as Daniel and Derek DeSteven. They're grandsons of Daniel Morris Salter, who was part of UFO crash recovery teams. And so their grandpa wrote a book called Life with a Cosmos Clearance. And both Daniel and Derek, via their grandpa's connections there, themselves were part of the programs, the Super Soldier Secret Space programs. I think Derek from 4 to 10, and then Daniel a little bit longer, from the ages of 4 to 14. And so both of them will be up on stage speaking to those experiences. Gina Virginia Casella is she has a lot of shamanic healing, and so she'll be speaking. Nate Gray, Susan Long, both of them are Secret Space Program experiencers, or at least especially Susan Long. Nate Gray, he has less recall, but he's definitely an experiencer. And then that's a lot of the lineup, but then we've got special surprises like Adam Apollo will be DJing our one dance party, and Sarah Adams will be hostessing our pre-event meet and greet the night before. So we got a lot going on. Please go to fulldisclosure.live or fulldisclosuremovement.org, all one word, or fulldisclosure.network, where I'm grabbing up all the full disclosure stuff with my team.
Oh, excellent. It sounds like you have action-packed bunch of presenters on that conference, my friend. And this will be on July 15th through the 18th at the Sirata Beach Resort in St. Pete Beach, Florida. Beautiful place. And thank you so much for being on the show. I mean, as I'm writing notes, I'm already preparing for our next conversation later this year. And I really appreciate you coming on the show again, my friend.
Yep. Thank you, Diego. It was great being here. Again, I love to be back. And then again, in addition to our conference, we've got the Day of Being weekend tacked on to the 19th and 20th. That's Saturday and Sunday, just for anyone making plans. And I can also be reached directly on Facebook Messenger. With all the censorship and banning, still, it's an easy platform for me. Brian Tseng, TSCNG, and add Solar Bee, my nickname, because there's more Brian Tsengs on there than you'd think.
Of course, I get it. Same thing with my name. You see a lot of that too, my friend. Good luck, my friend.
Thank you, brother.
Copyright Diego the Podcaster. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out with Diego is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.